We're going to be taking a cool and scenic tour along US 74. Come on, let's go. Alright everyone, today we're going to be doing US Highway 74. US 74 is just like US 76 as it travels from Chattanooga all the way over to Wilmington, North Carolina. But unlike US 76, US 74 only travels in two states, Tennessee and North Carolina. Also, it is really neglected at its western end, but its eastern end, it's alright. Plus, it's pretty decently signed and acts as North Carolina's US Highway 58. So, let us get started with US 74. But first, you're watching the TheDerpHog, where I make highways content on all sorts of different topics. If you've been enjoying it, be sure to hit that like button. And if you've been really enjoying it, be sure to smash that subscribe button so you're notified on all future videos. And if you really want to help out the channel, become a member today where you get custom cool emojis, early access to future videos, along with one free Azure request per month. And if you don't want to become a member, you can always just pay $3 for a intersection request in future videos. Those highways will be listed down in the description below, and I'll make sure to shout you out when that video releases. So let's get on with the highway. As you can see here, this is the map of US Highway 74 as it runs from Chattanooga, Tennessee, all the way over to Wilmington, North Carolina, with the majority of it being in the state of North Carolina. And this colored portion is the part that I've been on personally. So with that, I'm going to talk about eastbound US 74. So to start off here, we have a little graphic that I want to explain. So according to the wiki, US 74 actually begins here all the way down at the Interstate 75 and Interstate 24 junction. But we're going to be starting up here at the US 74 exit because TDOT neglects US Highway 74 between the US 74 exit and Interstate 24. So that's why I'm not going to be covering the Interstate 75 portion going either direction. So with that, we begin here on Interstate 75, where US 74 is not even mentioned at its own exit. US 64 bypasses the one that's getting billing here. But luckily, when we get onto the ramp itself, we do have a mention of US Highway 74, which is good. And our first major interchange is US 11 and 64 proper, as 74 is now being signed for Okui, which I do not like at all. Sure, it's where we meet US Highway 411, but Okui is a unincorporated community. That should definitely be in Murphy, North Carolina. And just like the Florida Highway 17 and US 17 situation, US 74 is meeting Tennessee Highway 74 here in Cleveland, Tennessee. And here we reunite with US Highway 64 as we're not going to be concurrent with it as we head towards Okui. Like I said, that should be Murphy, North Carolina. Skipping ahead to the Okui area, we meet with US Highway 411 here. And we're now getting signed for Murphy, which is a great choice. And here we get a sign telling us that Murphy, North Carolina is 55 miles away. Alright then. And here we are entering into the state of North Carolina. And if you've seen my 64 videos, this seems very familiar to you. Also, I got a question. Where are they getting the 563 miles for Mankato from? Because according to the wiki, US 64 North Carolina is 604 miles long. So, where's this 563 coming from? And our first major intersection here in the state of North Carolina is US Highway 19 and 129, and we're going to have a congruency with these highways. And like I said in the 19 northbound video and US 64 reboot, that 64 eastbound should be Franklin, not Hayesville. Hayesville only has a population of 300 something, which I do not like at all. And after leaving US 64, we're now getting signed for Andrews and Bryson City, which are alright choices. And on our way to Andrews and Bryson City, we get some awesome scenery here. Man, Western North Carolina is just really beautiful. I would definitely recommend visiting the area. Here's where US 129 splits off from US 19 and 74, as they're getting signed for Bryson City, while US 129 is going to be heading through the mountains and up towards Knoxville. And our first mileage sign here in the state of North Carolina, Cherokee actually becomes our primary from 33 miles away. I mean, I would prefer to see Asheville instead, but Cherokee is still a pretty sizable place. And on our way to Bryson City and Cherokee, we get some more awesome scenery here in western North Carolina. And we've seen this before, where US 19 splits off from US Highway 74. And we can see that there's that mileage sign on the left side of the road here, so let us take a look to see what it says. Hey, we get Asheville now as our primary from 66 miles away, which is an awesome choice. But after US 19 leaves us, we're now getting Waynesville as our primary from 38 miles away. I mean, yes, I get Waynesville is still a pretty sizable city, but Asheville should definitely be on here. No need for Waynesville as our primary. Here in the Sylva area, we'll meet with US Highway 441, which will actually take you up towards Cherokee and the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And on the 441 and 74 concurrency, we pass by this really scary looking bridge here. That would definitely give me some fear. And here's where US 441 leaves US 74, as it's going to be concurrent with US 23 southbound towards Atlanta, while 23 northbound is now going to be concurrent with us towards Sylva and Waynesville. We're already within the city of Sylva. We do not need to be signed on this overhead. That should be Waynesville and Asheville. If 23 and 441 south get Atlanta, why can't we get Asheville in CDOT? We do not need Sylva here. But luckily, our next mileage sign, Asheville does become our primary once again from 47 miles away. And here we are meeting the Blue Ridge Parkway, and when I was back in this area in May, this is the interchange where I got onto the Blue Ridge Parkway. And I definitely recommend checking out that road. It's absolutely amazing. And at this intersection, we are now getting signed for Waynesville. Okay. Here's my own picture of a mileage sign with Asheville still being our primary from 34 miles away. And here is the exit for US 23 Business, which will take you into downtown Waynesville. And here's my own pictures of the US Highway 276 exit. And if you want to check US 276 out, it's in the top right corner here. Here's where US 19 merges back into US 23 and 74 here. And here we meet Business US Highway 23 once again, and it's now getting signed for East Waynesville this time. I don't think East and West Waynesville exist. You can just do Waynesville proper here. Here's where US 74 splits off from US Highway 19 and 23, as US 74 is now going to be heading up towards Interstate 40, gaining its control cities. Here we are going to be joining with Interstate 40 eastbound here, as 40 west will take you over towards Knoxville. And here we're now going to be joining with Interstate 26, as Interstate 40 is in the very infamous Hickory and Biltmore State pull through. Come on, NCDOT, you need to change that. Who is going to be taking Interstate 40 to the Biltmore State? That's very provincial of you. But I do like that 26 eastbound control city of Hendersonville and Spartanburg. Here's where US 25 is now going to be joining with US 74 and Interstate 26. Here you are meeting with US Highway 64, and it looks like that they changed the control city from Bat Cave to Chimney Rock Road. I mean, it's slightly better. At least you're not revealing where Batman lives now, NCDOT. Here's where US 25 splits off from Interstate 26 and US Highway 74 at the Eastern Continental Divide here, as it's being signed for Greenville, while 26 and 74 is still getting signed south for Spartanburg. Here's where 26 splits off from US Highway 74, or 74 splitting off from Interstate 26, being signed for Columbus and Rutherfordton. I do not like that Columbus on there. We're already in Columbus, North Carolina. That should be Rutherfordton and Charlotte, because US 74 is the fastest way to Charlotte from here. But our next mileage time, we now get Shelby as our primary from 37 miles away, with Rutherfordton and Forest City being the same distance. Charlotte should be on this mileage time. Take off either Rutherfordton or Forest City and put on Charlotte here. But guess what? We get a separate mileage sign with Charlotte on the bottom line from 81 miles away. So let me ask you this, why can't that Charlotte be on that previous mileage sign instead of having its own separate one with Gastonia? It doesn't make sense. Here we are making North Carolina Highway 9, which will take you south towards South Carolina 9 to form the Super Carolina 9 Highway. In our next mileage time, we just get Rutherfordton and Forest City from the same distance once again. Again, let me tell you this, Charlotte should be on here. And like last time, we get another separate mileage time with Gastonia and Charlotte on it. This time it's a palindromic mileage time. That's pretty cool. Here in Rutherfordton, we meet with US Highway 221, and it's also giving sign for Spartanburg as well, too. I mean, you could have stayed on Interstate 26, but sure, that southbound control for 221 is good. Anyways, here in the Rutherfordton area, we're now getting signed east for Shelby. Again, that should be Charlotte. Here we are making the Shelby bypass, and once it becomes complete, that should be signed for Charlotte. As for now, 74 East for Shelby is okay because we become a surface street within the city of Shelby. And here in Shelby, we meet with North Carolina Highway 18, and we're now getting signed for Kings Mountain. So, not even Gastonia, which would make way more sense. We're just getting signed for the place that we meet Interstate 85 at. What is wrong with you, NC-Dot? Anyways, here in Kings Mountain, we're now getting signed for Gastonia. Or, we're about to meet Interstate 85, which will take you to Charlotte, so at least, I guess Gastonia would work here. But when we meet Interstate 85, we get nothing once US 29 joins us. Okay, Gastonia should definitely be on this pull-through here. Unless NC-Dot wants to be provincial and keep Gastonia on Interstate 85. Anyways, here in downtown Gastonia, we meet with US Highway 321 along with North Carolina Highway 274. And here's a cool view of downtown Gastonia. After ranting about it so many times on Interstate 85, we finally get to see downtown. Here in McAdenville, we meet with North Carolina Highway 7, and this stretch of highway I actually did feature in my Christmas video from last year, so definitely check that out. And we're now meeting with Interstate 485, which is designed for Spartanburg and Columbia respectively, which are good control cities. And after meeting Interstate 485, we actually get a Charlotte city limit sign, so that is pretty cool. Here we pass by the CLT Airport, or Charlotte Douglas International. And we're here, we meet with the road that'll take you up to Charlotte Highway 4, so that's pretty cool. And here's where US 29 splits off from US Highway 74 before we're entering into downtown Charlotte. And I just like this view of the Charlotte skyline here, it looks absolutely amazing. Before we enter into downtown Charlotte, we're actually meeting Interstate 77 here. And we're now going to have a short concurrency with Interstate 277, which is getting signed for both a cardinal direction and the inner and outer situation too. I mean, I prefer more of the clockwise and counterclockwise, but inner and outer makes sense as well. And right off the 77 junction, we now get a begin Interstate 277 shield, so that's pretty cool. And here we have the exit that will actually take you over to Bank of America Stadium, home of the Carolina Panthers. And US 74 is literally right next to Bank of America Stadium, so that is pretty awesome that you get to see the stadium right from US 74. Here we have some more exits which will take you to other attractions here in the city of Charlotte. And we can see that 277 and 74 are just getting a through traffic pull through. Here's where North Carolina 16 is going to be joining with Interstate 277 and US Highway 74. And here's where US 74 splits off from Interstate 277 as we're just getting the Independent Expressway. I mean, you could put Wilmington on here, or at least a suburb of Charlotte, because we're still a freeway. It's not like we're going to become a surface street. I don't like the name of this expressway here. Anyways, our first major exit after splitting off from Interstate 277, we meet Charlotte Highway 4 once again, and this time it's known as Wendover Road. And here is where North Carolina 27 splits off from US Highway 74, as we're now just being signed for Independence Boulevard to Interstate 485. Okay. Here we meet with Interstate 485, and this time it gets suburbs of Charlotte instead of actual good control cities. That's another thing I'm confused about. How come on the west side of the city, 485 gets its parents' control and Interstate 77's control, but on the east side it just gets suburbs? But again, why can't we also get 77 and 85 controls here too? And on Interstate 485, we're now getting signed east for Monroe. Also, Wilmington should be on there. Yes, I get Monroe is a pretty big suburb, but Wilmington should be on here. 74 is the fastest way to Wilmington, so sign Wilmington. And here in Monroe, we're now going to be meeting the Monroe bypass here, which is being signed for Wilmington, which is a great choice. And we're going to be taking the Monroe bypass here. And on the Monroe bypass, we actually get a mileage sign with Wilmington from 182 miles away. That is awesome. And here on the Monroe bypass, we meet with US Highway 601 here, being signed for Monroe and Concord, while North Carolina Highway 200 is just get the Kentucky treatment. Also, fun fact, North Carolina Highway 200 will take you over to a community called JARS, JARS. And after leaving Monroe, we get another mileage sign with Wadesboro on the top line from 17 miles away, and Wilmington from 162 now. Here in Wadesboro, we meet with the great US Highway 52 and 52 and 74 now going to be concurrent. But our next mileage sign, we now get Rockingham on the top line, and we're now favoring US Highway 52 for Cheraw. I mean, yes, I get that Cheraw is out of state, but I like to see Wilmington on here too. You could do Cheraw and Wilmington instead of Rockingham and Cheraw. You could still have a 52 control and still sign Wilmington. And here is where US Highway 52 splits off from US 74 to head to Cheraw. And we also have a intersection request, or more of a building request. This Bojangles here was requested by Florida Man. Thank you for that request. Anyway, skipping ahead to the Rockingham area, we're now going to be on the Rockingham bypass, as US 74 is now being signed for Laurinburg. But since there's already Interstate 74 signage in this area, that should definitely be Laurinburg and Wilmington. But here on the brand new Rockingham bypass, Interstate 74 and US 74 are getting signed south for Lumberton, which I do not like at all. That should definitely be Lumberton and Wilmington. No need for Lumberton by itself. Also, this picture was taken by Ryan Golden, so thank you for sending these pictures. And they also sent me these pictures where there is Interstate 74 signage in the Rockingham area, so thank you for that. Still in the Rockingham area, we meet the great US Highway 1, a highway that I did actually for my birthday series, which you can check out in the top right corner here, as it's being signed for Rockingham, Southern Pines, and also for Cheraw, so that's where it meets US Highway 52. And you can also get two US 220 shields, so that's pretty awesome too. And still in the Rockingham area, we meet with North Carolina Highway 38, as it's being signed for Bennettsville. And this is roughly where Interstate 73 is going to be splitting off from Interstate 74 whenever that gets built. Our next mileage time, we now get Lumberton as our primary from 53 miles away. I mean, since it's now just US 74, kind of makes sense, but we're being signed for Wilmington all the way from Monroe, so why can't Wilmington also appear on these mileage signs here in CDOT? Skipping ahead to the Laurinburg area, we're now going to be signed for Lumberton, which, even though that Interstate 74 is signed in this area, that should be Lumberton and Wilmington. No need for Lumberton by itself. Luckily, our next mileage sign, we do get Wilmington again from 111 miles away. Here in the Laurinburg, we meet with US 15 and 401, and 501 southbound is now going to be joining us. And here's where US 501 splits off from US 74 as it's being signed south for Roland and Myrtle Beach. I like that Myrtle Beach on there. But our next mileage time, we now get Whitesville from 49 miles away. Not even Wilmington? Yeah, I get that's where we meet US 701, but Myrtle Beach traffic is either going to be taking US 501 or Interstate 95, not all the way out to Whiteville. NCDOT, what are you doing here? Luckily, our next mileage time, Wilmington again reappears from 95 miles away now this time. Here we are meeting Interstate 95 being signed for Florence and Lumber and Fayetteville, respectively. And here we can see that Interstate 74 is still concurrent with us as we're making signed for Whiteville and Wilmington. And our next mileage time, we do get Whiteville and Wilmington as our two control cities. Also looks like we're now getting a perfect 74 miles, which is awesome. Here we meet with North Carolina Highway 410 being signed for Chadbourne and Bladenboro, and this is the furthest east that I've been on US 74. Here's where US 76 is now going to be merging into us, and we're going to have a concurrency with it all the way to Wilmington. Here in Whiteville, we meet with US Highway 701, which will also take you down to Myrtle Beach. In our next mileage time, we do get Wilmington from 47 miles away. But this is when North Carolina 87 joins us. We now get its most southern control city of Southport from 34 miles away. I mean, if you want to sign something beyond Wilmington, you could either do Carolina Beach or Wrightsville Beach or New Bern, not Southport. But luckily, our next mileage time after North Carolina 87 splits off from us, we do get Wrightsville Beach from 25 miles away. And on the outskirts of Wilmington, we meet with Interstate 140 here, as it's seeing a whole bunch of good stuff. And now we're going to be joining with US Highway 17 as we're going to be heading into the city of Wilmington itself. Here we split off from US Highway 17 and 76 as we're now going to be joining with US 421 for a short time. Here's where we split off from US Highway 421 as it's being signed for Clinton, and we're now getting signed for Wrightsville Beach, which is a good choice. Here's US 74 going over the Cape Fear River here on this cool looking drawbridge. And on the other side, we're now meeting with US Highway 117, which will take you up to the eastern terminus of Interstate 40, so that's why it's being signed for Raleigh. And we're still getting signed for Wrightsville Beach, while US 117 will take you down to Carolina Beach. And on our way to Wrightsville Beach, we meet with US Highway 17 and 76. And personally, I think this concurrency would make way more sense if it was in the city of Philadelphia instead of the city of Wilmington, North Carolina. And here is where US 76 splits off from US Highway 74, as US 74 is going to be heading up towards Wrightsville Beach. And here is where US 74 takes a right turn here onto this surface street here. And it looks like the arrow is missing, so it's just telling you that we're still on 74, but we don't know which way to go. And a couple miles down the road, we end here at this circle here. And sadly, we do not have a end US Highway 74 shield. The only thing that we get is a couple of rocks and a couple of pine trees. So with that, we're going to be turning around and doing westbound US 74. So we begin here at that same circle where we're now facing the other direction. And this time there is a bench here, so that is pretty cool. And after following that small residential road, we're now going to be taking a right turn here to head back into mainland North Carolina. Here you are reuniting with US Highway 76, as 76 and 74 are going to have a concurrency. Here's where US 76 splits off from US 74 to join with 17 here. Here we meet with US Highway 117 once again, and we can see that US 117 is being signed for the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, while we're now getting signed for downtown Wilmington. And at that downtown exit, we're now getting signed for Whiteville. Again, why are we being signed for Whiteville? That should be Lumberton. Lumberton is way bigger than Whiteville. The only thing that we meet in Whiteville is US Highway 701. And Myrtle Beach traffic would probably be taking 17 instead of hopping onto 74 and 76 to head toward Whiteville and 701. So again, that doesn't make sense. Here we meet with US Highway 421, and we're now going to have a short concurrency with it as we head over to US 17 and 76. Here we're going to be joining with US Highway 17 and 76, and I feel like that Charlotte and Lumberton would be way better, more information on this overhead sign here instead of on the side of the road. Come on. And here's where US 17 splits off from US 74 and 76, as we're now getting signed for Whiteville and Lumberton. And that 17 southbound should definitely be Myrtle Beach. Our next mileage sign, we do get Whiteville on the top line from 38 miles away and Lumberton from 75. On our way out of the city of Wilmington, we meet with US Highway 140 here, once again. And this is when we join with North Carolina 87 once again, and we're now favoring North Carolina 87 going northbound on it. Come on, Lumberton, that should be Elizabethtown and Lumberton, no need for Whiteville. But after North Carolina 87 splits off from us, now we're favoring US Highway 76 for some reason. Fair Bluff has a population of like 700 something people, and it's the last town on US Highway 76 in the state of North Carolina. If you want to favor US 76, that should be Florence instead of Fair Bluff. Also, we're only 15 miles out from Whiteville. This should be Fair Bluff and Lumberton, not Whiteville and Fair Bluff. Here in Whiteville, we meet with US Highway 701 being signed for Whiteville and Clarkton. And here's where US 76 splits off from US Highway 74, as it's being signed for Chadbourne and Fair Bluff. Once again, that should be Chadbourne and Florence, no need for that Fair Bluff. Our next mileage time, we now get Laurinburg from 46 miles away, so Lumberton is nowhere to be mentioned at all. Here you are meeting with North Carolina Highway 41, which will take you up into Lumberton. On our next mileage time, we now get Charlotte as our primary from 121 miles away, which is awesome. Also, it looks like that Maxton has disappeared from the chat. Here in the Lumberton area still, we meet with Interstate 95 being signed for Florence and Fayetteville. And we do get a pull through for both 74s being signed for Laurinburg and Rockingham. I mean, that should be Rockingham and Charlotte, because we just had a mileage sign with Charlotte on the bottom line. Luckily, our next mileage sign, Charlotte is still our primary from 116 miles away. And here we are meeting with US Highway 501, and 501 is going to have a short concurrency with US 74 here. And this is where 501 splits off from US 74, as it's going to be joining with 15 and the Great 401 being signed for Fayetteville and Bennettsville, while 74 is being signed west for Charlotte. That is awesome, NC-Dot. That definitely deserves a rare W. You're signing Charlotte over Monroe and Rockingham. Well done here. For our next mileage time, Rockingham becomes our primary from 17 miles away, with a little town called Hamlet from only being 12. So you just did a complete 180 NC-Dot. Why? Where's Charlotte? But after going through Rockingham, we do get Charlotte as our primary once again from another 74 miles away. That's now 2 times this has happened. Here in Rockingham, we meet with US Highway 1 once again, being signed for Rockingham, Southern Pines, and Chirac. And I heard that this sign was actually replaced and taking away Southern Pines, sadly. Here in Wadesboro, we'll meet with US Highway 52 and 52 and 74 are going to have a concurrency. And here's where US 52 splits off from US 74 as US 74 is going to be heading towards Charlotte. Here we have the Monroe bypass once again. And we're now going to be hopping onto it as it'll take you towards Charlotte. Here we meet with US Highway 601 and this time it does not get an overhead pull through, sadly. And here on the outskirts of Charlotte, we meet with Interstate 485 as US 74 proper is now getting signed for Charlotte. Here we meet with Charlotte Highway 4 once again, and this time it is known as Eastway Drive. So it looks like that south of 74 it's one street, and then north of 74 it becomes another one. Here we are about to join with Interstate 277 as it's just getting a couple of freeway names. And here on Interstate 277, North Carolina 16 splits off from us as it's being signed for 3rd and 4th Streets. And we're going to be meeting exit 1E soon. And here on Interstate 277, going this direction, we actually get a pretty cool view of the Charlotte skyline still, so that is awesome. I should come to Charlotte someday. I only live 2.5 hours away. Plus, I've been through the city multiple times, but I've never been to downtown. I'd like to visit it someday. Here we are meeting with US 21 and Interstate 77, and we are going to actually be doing US 21 next week, so we will be revisiting this junction here. And I do not like that northbound 77 control city. That should definitely be Wytheville. And after the Interstate 77 junction, we do get an end Interstate 277 shield, so that's pretty cool. Here is where US 29 reunites with US Highway 74. And here we pass by the CLT airport once again. And on the outskirts of Charlotte, we meet with Interstate 485, and it's being signed for Columbia and Spartanburg once again. Here in Gastonia, we'll meet with US Highway 321. And on the outskirts of Gastonia, we actually meet with Interstate 85 here, getting signed for Charlotte and Spartanburg respectively. And we also lose US 29 too. And here's my own picture of US Highway 74 being signed on Interstate 85, being signed for Kings Mountain and Shelby. I mean, personally, you could have Asheville on here because this is the fastest way to Asheville now. No need for that Kings Mountain. We're already within the city limits anyways. Skipping ahead to Shelby, we're now meeting with North Carolina Highway 150, which is also concurrent with North Carolina Highway 18 truck. In our next mileage time, we actually get Asheville now as our primary from 71 miles away, which is a good choice. Here in the Forest City area, we meet with 74 alternate, and I can sign for Columbus in Asheville. Columbus is because that's where we meet Interstate 26. Here in Rutherfordton, we meet with US Highway 221 in the same control cities that we saw going eastbound. Here we meet with North Carolina Highway 9 once again. And now we're going to be joining with Interstate 26 as it's being signed for Tryon and Spartanburg going eastbound. Well, westbound is being signed for Asheville, which is a good choice. Also, look at this awesome view. I just like it. Here's where US 25 reunites with Interstate 26 and US Highway 74. Here's where we meet US 64 once again. And hey, it looks like that we actually get a westbound control city for 64 as well, which is good. Here's where US 25 splits off from Interstate 26 and US 74, as it'll take you up into downtown Asheville. Here's where we're going to be joining with Interstate 40 westbound, as we're now getting signed for Knoxville and Canton. No, that is not Canton, Ohio, that is Canton, North Carolina. While 40 eastbound just gets to the absolutely abysmal controlled cities of Hickory and Biltmore State. Here is where we meet US Highway 19 and 23 as they're getting signed for Asheville and Enka Candler. And this is a picture that I got while I was heading to Waynesville back in May. And there is just a US 74 shield, no Interstate 40, so it looks like that Interstate 40 doesn't exist here. Our next mileage shine, we do get Clyde on the top line and Knoxville, which is for Interstate 40. Here's where US 74 splits off from Interstate 40, as US 74 is now getting signed for Clyde and Waynesville. Here's where we're going to be joining with US 19 and 23 southbound, as we're getting signed for Waynesville and Cherokee. And we're now going to become the Great Smoky Mountain Expressway, so that is pretty cool. Here's where US 19 splits off from US 23 and 74, as it's been signed for Maggie Valley and Cherokee, which are alright choices. US 23 and 74 getting signed for Waynesville and Sylva. I mean, you could do Franklin, North Carolina, because Franklin is bigger than Sylva, but I do like that Waynesville on here because we're still within the Waynesville area and we haven't met the main exit for it yet. Here's that main exit for Waynesville, US Highway 276. Our next mileage time, we now get Franklin as our secondary and Bryson City from 35 miles away. Here we pass by the Blue Ridge Parkway once again. And here's where 441 northbound joins with US 74, as they're also now getting signed for Cherokee and still Bryson City, while 23 and 441 will take you south towards Atlanta. Here's where 441 splits off from US 74 as it'll head up towards the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And here's where we reunite with US Highway 19 as 19 and 74 are going to be heading south toward Andrews. Our next mileage time, we now get Andrews on the top line from 24 miles away and Murphy now from 39. Here's where US 129 reunites with us as we're now getting signed south for Andrews. I mean, you could do Murphy instead or do Chattanooga, because as we saw in the 19 series, 19 southbound was getting signed for Chattanooga. Here in Murphy, we unite with US Highway 64 and 6474, 19 and 129 are all going to have a concurrency as we head towards Chattanooga. Here is where 19 and 129 splits off from US 64 and 74 as they're getting signed for Blairsville, Georgia. But once again, like we saw in the 19 series, they're actually getting signed for Atlanta, while we're getting signed for Chattanooga, which is a good choice. And shortly up the road, we're now entering into the state of Tennessee. Oh boy. Hey, TDOT actually provides us a mileage time, so that is pretty awesome. But at Random Junction here, instead of Chattanooga as our primary, we're now getting signed for Cleveland. Yes, I get that's where the terminus of 74 proper is, but we also meet Interstate 75 in Cleveland, and guess where 75 takes you? Down to Chattanooga, so why can't we get signed for Chattanooga? Here in Akui, we meet with US Highway 411 here. And this is where we come 64 bypass once again, as we're now getting signed for Chattanooga, which is the correct choice. While 64 will take you into downtown Cleveland, Tennessee, and going to be meeting US Highway 11. Here we meet with Tennessee Highway 74 once again. I do not like that. And our last major junction is US Highway 11 and 64, as they're just getting signed for Cleveland once again. And here we get a couple of pull-throughs for Interstate 75, getting signed for Chattanooga and Knoxville respectively. And this is where we're going to be ending at US Highway 74, because like I explained in the beginning of the video, US 74 is nowhere to be seen on the Interstate 75 concurrency. So with that, we're going to be ending at US Highway 74, and we're going to be moving on to the places I'll go. So since I've been on some of US Highway 74, I would like to definitely recommend some places to visit on US 74. So places I'd like to visit is Cleveland, Tennessee, the town of Murphy, Andrews, Bryson City, the city of Shelby, Gastonia, once again the city of Charlotte and its attractions, and then Laurinburg, Rockingham, and Chadbourne. While some places that you should definitely check out is Chattanooga and its attractions, and then Waynesville and that surrounding area, the Blue Ridge Parkway, the town of Lumberton, and finally the city of Wilmington. And if you have any other places that I should definitely check out on US 74, please let me know down in the comment section below. So that ends US Highway 74. Thank y'all so much for watching this episode on US Highway 74. I hope you got to learn a little bit more about the highway, and I definitely recommend checking it out, especially in western North Carolina. It is absolutely pretty there too. Also, Waynesville is a pretty cool city to check out. So with that, here are my next few highways. If you have any intersection requests for any of the upcoming highways, please let me know down in the comment section below, and I'll make sure to shout you out once these highways are released. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all next week as we do a birthday celebration on US 21.